Putin didn't just invade Ukraine, he's now invading Russia. One draft notice, one border closure, one terrifying young man at a time. The war isn't just at the front anymore, it's at the nightclub, the gym, the train station. Because in Putin's Russia, if you're a man between 18 and 30, every outing could be your last as a civilian. Step into the wrong metro station, and a facial recognition camera might flag you. Step into the wrong bar, and the cops might drag you out. Straight to the trenches. This is a country at war with itself. And while the Kremlin pretends this isn't a mobilization, everything from border bans to secret draft laws says otherwise. Russia is broke. The bonuses for soldiers are vanishing. The bodies are piling up. And now Putin has only one option left: trap his own people and squeeze them for blood. This is the collapse no one talks about, because it isn't just military, it's psychological. Russia is becoming a prison, not just in a metaphor, but in law. And the scariest part? Most Russians still don't realize they're already locked in. Let's break down the full story. Putin and Kim Jong-un are BFFs these days, and Putin might be feeling a little inspired, because Russia is looking more and more like North Korea. In October 2025, the State Duma began to consider a new proposal. Andrei Kovalenko, head of Ukraine's Center for Countering Disinformation, called it a new Iron Curtain. If the law goes through, Russian nationals will no longer be allowed to travel to NATO countries during wartime. Unless they can pay, of course. For everyone else, closed airports, expensive tickets, and domestic tourism in the style of North Korea, he said. What's going on? Well, there's already a law that bans Russian men who've been called up to the military from leaving the country. That law came on the books in August of 2023. The moment they get the draft notice, they're on the hook. Failure to comply can mean the loss of driver's licenses, a ban on selling property, and a permanent stay in the motherland. And that's just the least of it. But first things first, you might not like it, but it makes sense on some level. There has to be some sort of punishment for violating national draft laws, or else the country might face manpower shortages in the war. In the United States, all men who turn 18 still have to register for the Selective Service System on penalty of a felony conviction that carries a $250,000 fine and 5 years in the slammer. Ukraine also banned all men ages 18 to 60 from leaving the country in February of 2022. Just like that. But Russia is taking things a big step further. Putin suffered an embarrassment when around 600,000 well-educated Russian men hightailed it out of the motherland. Once he called reservists to the colors in 2022, that was it. They were out of there. And actually, that was just the second act. More than 1 million Russians crossed the border between their country and Georgia between March and November of 2022. It all rattled Putin. He needed to do something. Again, that's normal for a country at war, no matter the justification for the war. In the first half of 2025, Russians made 13.7 million trips overseas. Turkey was the most popular destination. 19% of those trips were across the Black Sea. This apparently bothered Putin's government enough that the Duma is now considering passing the law. Maybe too many of them are taking a permanent vacation. With well over 1 million casualties and counting, Putin's running out of options. He needs manpower badly. He can't let the potential pool of recruits get ideas about staying in Turkey for too long. For Russian citizens, though, the law would only close the loop. The ones that get out are already lucky. Here's where the similarities with the United States and Ukraine end. The ones with certain other countries begin. But before we get into them, please consider subscribing. It helps us keep talking about stories like this that are too complicated for your nightly news broadcast or social media feed. Kim Jong-un took full advantage of the pandemic to tighten his grip on the North Korean people, as if that was even possible. Turns out it was. He was already building electrified fences to keep them in. But then he made a new law. North Koreans now can't even leave their home province without a special permit. The government has to control every move. The Russian government isn't talking about anything like that yet, but it might not need to. The Russian economy is doing that on its own. The Kremlin's put a lot of new rubles into the economy over the last 4 years, and that means only one thing. Inflation has skyrocketed. 13.75% in 2022, 5.86% in 2023, 8.44% in 2024, and about 9.27% in 2025. High inflation means only one thing. Russia's central bank has had to step in and raise interest rates to 21%. The inflation means that Russians can barely afford bread, eggs, or sugar now. How are they supposed to pay for transportation or hotels? Welcome to the North Korean experience. So the economy and subsistence are doing a lot to keep the Russian people in place. They're all exactly where they need to be. Less movement means it's easier for the government to track them and put them on the draft boards. But Putin learned from his other BFF just in case. The new draft laws have come with some high-tech insurance policies to make sure they're enforced. Before the war, there was a 20-day grace period for conscripts to report for duty. Not anymore. As of November 2025, you're trapped instantly. And Putin wanted to make sure people couldn't have an "I didn't know the order was in the mail" excuse. The 2023 law meant draft notices are now posted electronically and marked on the official register of legal documents as soon as they get put up. In other words, effective immediately. Individuals that have officially been called up must surrender their passports within 5 days' notice. They will only be returned when that individual's tour of service ends. So, if you're a man in Russia between the ages of 18 and 30, you're expected to keep checking your inbox. The moment the notice is in there, that's it. It's over, whether you see it or not. And once you're tagged by the system, you're not just trapped, you're hunted if you don't show up to your station. And the system gets stronger all the time. Just this November, Putin signed yet another law. There is now a 30-day expiration date for electronic draft notices. That sounds like a good thing, but it's not. Military draft boards used to be able to keep troops called up on standby indefinitely. Now they have 30 days to actually deploy those troops. Russia still does its call-ups on a biannual basis, but now draftees will be sent to their service points at 2 periods, between April 1st and July 15th, then another round from October 1st to December 31st. The new law is a step closer to a year-round draft in Russia. Lag times and bottlenecks will be reduced now. Russian troops will get sent to the front faster. Why so frantic? Because for Putin and his government, there's no choice. Russia is well past 1 million casualties now. Security experts predict that its military capability will degrade considerably through 2026. War spending has cannibalized the rest of the economy. It can't be sustained for too much longer. It's now or never. That means more troops have to get sent to the front. Putin has to grab as much territory as possible so he can sell a victory in Ukraine to a Russian public that has sacrificed a lot. So, what happens to those who try to run? You're about to see just how far Russia will go to crush escape. Xi Jinping has spent more time with Putin than any other foreign leader. It's not just for business. The two are said to have a close personal relationship, too. So that means Xi is happy to let Putin in on more of his methods and sell him surveillance equipment. It starts with tracking and facial recognition software. The system was first tested in select regions like Sakhalin, Mari El, and Ryazan in 2024. It proved to be so effective that the government started to roll it out nationwide this year. So, what does it do? The Logistical government portal is the device that sends people their electronic draft card, but it has a double life. As soon as the notices get sent out, they're entered into all the surveillance databases at the border checkpoints. Their personal information, their physical attributes, their identities, probably even their moods. The border guards know everything. If a drafted Russian man tries to get past a checkpoint, there will be an FSA agent waiting for him. Once in custody, he'll be warned that his failure to report for service will lead to criminal charges. Russia's been using the system to target 135,000 men in the fall of 2025, and it's getting the job done. But Russia still isn't North Korea. Escape is possible. But escaping from Russia when you're drafted is still a bit like trying to escape from North Korea. The geopolitics doesn't favor it. Russian borders with other NATO countries are short and under heavy surveillance. Besides, most of the Russian draftees aren't anywhere near there. The people dying in Ukraine aren't from Moscow or St. Petersburg. They're not from the most densely packed parts of European Russia. That would come with some unpleasant political consequences. They come from Russia's poorer minority and geographically isolated communities. Siberia, the Caucasus Mountains, places where there are less ethnic Russians. The numbers tell the story. Around 77% of Russia's population lives in the European heartland. You'd think that naturally a similar proportion of the mobilized troops would come from there, right? Russia isn't honest about its casualty figures, but investigative journalists did some deep diving at the end of 2023. That was an important time period because it was the first full year that Putin used the mobilized conscripts in large numbers. They found something astonishing. In the east, far past the Ural Mountains, you'll find the Russian Republic of Buryatia, population almost 980,000 in the 2021 census. By comparison, Moscow had around 13 million, but by December 2023, 18% of the war's total casualties came from just this place. Dagestan and Chechnya are also favorites for the Russian war machine. If the men there can't get to the top of the UFC, they're almost certain to be sent to the front. The numbers proved it. 15% of the casualties came from Dagestan, and another 12% from Chechnya. It's actually easy for outside journalists to find. As early as the spring of 2022, a lot of the confirmed casualties had names suggesting that they came from Russia's North Caucasus Federal District. If you're an ethnic minority in Russia and you live outside the European heartland, your chances of dying in Ukraine weren't just a few times higher than your countrymen in the west or north. They were 75 times higher. It got to the point that the former president of Mongolia, Sakhajian Elbadorj, said that Russia's minorities were being treated like cannon fodder, and he invited many of them to come across the border where they would be treated much better. So, if you're a Russian man that wants to take up that invitation, you have to look at other escape routes. The border with Kazakhstan alone is 7,644 kilometers, the longest continuous land border in the world. It borders 14 other countries by land, and 15 if you include the maritime border with the United States. The guards can't be watching everywhere, but getting across all the security, across such vast stretches of land, when you're living in poverty? Tough. The people that managed to get out of the country early had resources, and the surveillance network has become much more sophisticated since then. There's also another obstacle. Russia doesn't punish the families of people who escape like North Korea. At least, not yet. But the men who would like to go on the run often have to make that tough choice anyway. Getting out is hard enough. Getting out alongside wives and children is even harder. So the choice is either to leave them behind or get sent right to the front. Yet the human drive for freedom from autocracy seems to be impossible to hold down. If it can exist in North Korea, it can definitely exist in Russia. That's why there's something like a Russian underground railroad now, dedicated to getting people out. It's understandably not based in Russia, though. It's a Georgian NGO called Idat Lesam, which translates to go by the forest in English. The meaning isn't literal, though. It's a play on words back from Soviet times. The real meaning? Get lost. By the spring of 2023, it helped 6,800 Russian men break out of the prison their boss was building. The founder himself is an exiled Russian, Grigory Sverdlin. He got on Putin's bad side years ago by being an anti-homelessness activist. Hard to believe, but true. The organization helps them get all over the world, not just to border countries like Kazakhstan or popular travel spots like Turkey, but to as far afield as Argentina. Go by the forest doesn't say how it gets people out, but it does have some advice. Change residences frequently to stay ahead of the authorities, and communicate through Telegram, which offers end-to-end encryption. Instagram was popular once, but it's now closed off. The mountains or endless steppe might be a daunting journey, but for people who are looking to escape, they're all much better prospects than a trip through the military. It's not just about the dangers of the front. Reporting for duty alone is frightening. Recruits sometimes don't even have proper beds. Footage has shown them sleeping on the floor, so you can imagine what equipping them must be like. Imagine showing up as you're ordered, and then you find that the body armor you're supposed to get isn't a real set. Sometimes it just looks like the real thing. Sometimes it's actually just a toy designed for an airsoft paintball game. That was the experience of a lot of the mobilized troops. Where'd the real armor go? Into the pockets of corrupt logistics officers who wanted to make a quick buck on the black market. If they can't steal the whole thing, sometimes they just take the ceramic or steel plates that can make them their coin. Some of the mobilized troops knew better than to trust their superiors, so they showed up with body armor that their families bought for them on the private market. Technically, it's illegal for Russian troops to have to buy their own armor. The state is supposed to provide, but the joke's on the draftees. That armor their family spent a lot on tends to get stolen, either by more corrupt officers or from more seasoned veterans who can't resist a little hazing. The stolen equipment then gets sold on platforms like Avito, or put onto other troops that the bosses want to preferentially survive. And if that's not shocking enough, just wait. Some of the mobilized troops don't even get the basic weapons they're supposed to. Some of the draftees get the AKM rifle, first introduced in 1959. They were just broken out of storage. Reliability after all that time is one concern, but it was also a logistical nightmare. Regular Russian combat units use the AK-74M or AK-12 rifles, chambered for the 5.45mm rounds, but the AKM uses 7.62mm rounds. You know what that means. A lot of troops went to battle without ammunition. British intelligence said the conscripts were using barely functioning rifles. But don't try complaining about it. For one thing, no one will hear you. Russia looks a lot more like China these days, not in its wealth, but in its censorship. Russia started to close the internet off when the troops moved across the border. Facebook, censored. Twitter or X, banned. Google, closed down and fined for 20 decillion, 181 quintillion times bigger than the entire global economy. iPhones? Keep them precious. They're not replaceable now. YouTube still works, but the Kremlin cut the bandwidth in 2024. That means if you're trying to watch this video in Russia without a VPN, it'll feel like those old dial-up modems from the 90s, maybe worse. The nightly news channels, run by the state or by favored companies like Gazprom. So Russians tend to hear only one thing. Real men serve in the military. They're told they should be proud, and stories of the meat grinder don't spread like they should. The internet's supposed to be closed until the end of the war, but don't bet on that. If you think this ends with the war, think again. For many Russians, the front line is just the beginning. What's one thing even Democratic leaders don't like to do? Give up power once they've gotten it. For Putin, the war has been an excuse to concentrate power even he never had before that. Russia now has the technology to ID anyone at any time, to own their bodies for whatever reason Putin wants. The draft isn't about obedience or patriotism, it's about control. If things get bad enough, there's now the infrastructure to prevent anyone from leaving. Just like North Korea. And just like North Korea, the borders were supposedly sealed to protect the nation. What they actually did was wall it off and destroyed it. Just no concentration camps for people trying to leave. Yet.